the more I read about it, it just was completely different from the way it was portrayed. So then I took out the Quran and started reading it. And it was nothing like what Facebook memes and internet portrayals say it is. The more I began looking into it, and then the more I began visiting with Muslims, I find out it's not this way at all. I think what got me interested in changing faiths, to be honest, was the way that the Muslims treated me. The Muslims that I have met are some of the kindest and nicest people that I have ever met. And then the other thing that is, I've been reading the Quran more and more, and it is amazing to me, like the Big Bang Theory is addressed in it 1,400 years before Stephen Hawking lived.
Today's guest is Gina. She is from a rural area in the USA. Now, Gina actually has not converted to Islam yet, but she's thinking about it, and she agreed to come onto the show to talk about it. So, hi, Gina.
Hello.
How are you today?
I'm doing very well, thank you.
Excellent, excellent. So, yeah, this is something special for us. Normally, we talk to converts or people who have been in Islam for a long time, and they're, experts in the field of conversion to Islam. But this is something unique. Can you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Okay, well, I'm 59 years old. I'm a very creative person. I enjoy anything creative and artistic. I paint, I play music, I knit, I draw, I do gourmet cooking. If it creates beauty or if it is creative, I love it. I'm very happily married to a wonderful, wonderful man. I grew up in an abusive home, and it took me a long time just to get over that and get my life on an even keel. I'm a mother to 3 grown children, and I'm a grandmother, and my family is my life. I live in a small town.
So you've been involved with the church all of your life, I guess, from what I can see here.
Well, my adult life, it was so strong in me, and then I was adopted, and the people that raised me tried to beat what was in my heart out of me, and so I skipped lunch and went into the room and taught myself how to play.
And so your involvement with Christianity, is that what gave you an sort of understanding of your faith in God, and is that why you are sort of thinking about Islam, or was it there other sources that made you think about Islam?
Well, it was other sources. See, growing up in rural USA, being Christian is just what you are. It's not a choice. You just are. There aren't other choices. It's what you're born into. You just are. And you don't even know that there are other things out there, especially in the Midwest of the United States. You don't even realize there's other faiths.
And so what was your first interaction with Islam, or your first knowledge of Islam? Was it through school, maybe when you were growing up, or was it just through television and media, news?
Well, my first real knowledge of Islam, other than the media hype, which is never in a positive light. When I grew up, you kind of knew it was out there, but you didn't really know anything about it, because growing up, I never even really knew other faiths were out there. You kind of heard, oh yeah, somewhere there's Buddhist, and somewhere over on the other side of the world there's Hindus, and then over here somewhere on the other side of the world there's Muslims. But other than that, that's really all you knew. The way I first came into contact with Islam was I was visiting a biological cousin that I had found when I began searching for my real family. And she lived up in Detroit. And we went to a festival and there was an Islam outreach society that had set up a booth, and they were handing out packets of information. And at this time, I was becoming disillusioned with the Christian faith simply because I have began, and I'm not going to say this is the faith, I'm going to say this is what people were using the faith for. I began to see the faith used as a platform for hate. And I want to make it very clear, I'm not saying it is the faith. I think it's being used as a tool. I saw them there with their packets, and all they were doing, they weren't harassing people, they weren't proselyting, they were just saying, would you like an information packet? And I just stood there and watched, and they were just standing there, and when people come by, they'd say, would you like information? And the way people were treating them was just awful. And I just stood back and just watched. And I think I stood there for 15, 20 minutes watching. And without fail, out of every 4 people they offered to, 3 of them just said something dreadful, like, go back to Saudi Arabia, or get out of here, you terrorist, or go away, raghead. And then I finally thought one person was going to say something nice. I said, yeah, I'll take your information. And he went to hand it to him, and he said, here, hold my ham sandwich so I can take it. And the more this went on, the more sickened I was. And finally I said, here, I'll take your packet. And at the time, it was just because I wanted somebody to be nice to him. And when I got back home, and I didn't read any of it till I came back to my home, I opened it and I read all the pamphlets. And I'm like, well, this is nothing like it's been portrayed. You know, the leaflets in there actually made sense. And everything made so much sense, you know, because I'd always read that the hijab was suppressing to women, and it was cruel, and the dress was suppressing, and instead it just made sense in an age where we still have beauty pageants and women have to get out and pounce around in swimsuits. I'm like, my gosh, you know, here women can, you know, it actually made sense why the women dress this way. You know, how they can be judged on who they are and what's in their head instead of how they look. And, you know, the more I read about it, it just was completely different from the way it was portrayed. So then I took out the Quran and started reading it. And it was nothing like what Facebook memes and internet portrayals say it is. And so then I got this idea of starting a movement called Carry the Quran, and trying to get people to read the Quran, not in the interest of conversion, but just to try and stop the hate and the misconceptions. Because there's internet memes going around that say, hey, the Quran says this. There's a verse in there that says, carry the, you know, that kill them all. Muslims want to kill everybody. And I thought, well, you know, if you can get people to read the Quran, you can see that this isn't what it's about. And so I started passing out Qurans and just saying, look, this is misunderstood. And so I've given out, oh, I'm trying to remember. When I got back, I got in touch with the people in Dearborn and asked them to send me, and they've sent me several boxes of Qurans and some packets of information. And I've given out a lot of them, and I've even given some talks about Islam and just trying to get rid of these misunderstandings and trying to say, look, it doesn't matter what the holy book is, whether it's the Bible, whether it's the Quran, you can pull verses out of it and you can make it say anything you want it to say. And, you know, when I give these talks, if I'm talking to Christians, I say, you can make the Bible say anything you want it to say. And I use the example, Judas went out and hung himself. Go and do thou likewise. If you pull verses out of it, you can make it say anything. Yeah, you can pull one verse out of the Quran and you can make it look terrible. But if you read what's above it and what's below it, you know, it looks completely different. And so the more I began looking into it, and then the more I began visiting with Muslims, I find out it's not this way at all.
This is truly an amazing story. So you are like a defender of the Quran, and you're still not even a Muslim yet. How long ago was that when you went to the festival?
That was in 2014, I believe, because it was well before the 2016 election.
And then how long did it take for you to then start this Carry the Quran initiative?
I started that after the 2016 election because I saw that the Islamophobia and the misunderstandings have really, really ramped up. And it really bothered me because, at the time I had no interest in a conversion. I just wanted the hatred, and it was really bothering me, some of the things. Just a couple days ago, I was talking with a adopted cousin, and I was saying, Kim, you've got to stop this. You've got to stop. What you were saying is not true. A local up here was putting things on Facebook saying that the churches are closed to Christians, but the mosques are all open. Why are they picking on us? You know what I'm saying? This stuff isn't even true. You're just stirring up hatred and xenophobia. You know, it I want to stop this. And so that was my original intent, was just to try and stop this because it's wrong.
Okay, and then through this interaction with your Carrying the Quran initiative, you started to meet some Muslims.
Yes.
Okay, can you tell me a bit about that and how it affected the way you were interested in Islam?
I think what got me interested in changing faiths, to be honest, was the way that the Muslims treated me and the difference in the way that they acted, because I wasn't seeing them act the way that I saw, the things that I've just related to you about what was going on. I didn't see them doing that. I saw nothing but the kindness and the sense of community. And it was their actions that got to me.
Okay, can you give me a little bit more information about their actions? What were some of the things that really stood out for you?
Well, what I told you in the beginning about how the Christian faith, and again, emphasizing that it's not the faith itself, but being used as a platform for hate as a whole. And again, I know that Islam is used too by some groups, but as a whole, the Muslims that I have met are some of the kindest and nicest people that I have ever met. And it is just their actions, their openness to me, and just that is what has reached out to me.
And in your area, are there many Muslims, or did you have to find them in other places?
Well, where I live is a very small town, and so it is when I have gone outside my area. Like I spent all of December and part of January in Phoenix. I have a daughter there, and I had a temporary job, and so I was down in Phoenix, and I sought out some Muslims there and was visiting with them. And I have also found a Muslim community up in Lincoln, and they've been visiting with them. And of course, we can't get together now because of Corona, but it's just every time I've visited with any Muslims, it's just it seems to be a night and day difference. And then the other thing that is, I've been reading the Quran more and more, and it is amazing to me. Like the Big Bang Theory is addressed in it 1,400 years before Stephen Hawking lived.
Okay, and besides interacting with the Muslims and reading the Quran, what are some of the other ways that you gained knowledge about the religion?
Well, a lot of it is through the material that the people in Detroit sent me in Dearborn, Michigan. And, I've just been reading that. And, I went into all of this with saying, no, I have no interest in conversion. I just want to eliminate the misunderstandings. And I have another friend in Minnesota that I was talking with. Her name is Adee, and she just kind of laughed and she said, well, that's what carrying a Quran for 5 years will do to you.
Yeah, definitely. So how much do you read the Quran? Is it something that you do every day or?
Well, it wasn't at first. I read it a couple times and then I just, always had 2 or 3 of them in my pocketbook when I was going around, so that when I would hear people say, disparaging things, or say, well, the Quran says kill them all, I'd say, well, wait a minute, have you ever read it? And, I'd pull it out and say, well, look, this is what you're referring to, but look at this, and I'd pull out the passage they were referring to and I'd say, well, look at this. This is what it's saying to, and I'd show them what was above and before it. And I'd say, here, why don't you read it? It's a beautiful book. Lately, I've been reading it a lot more, and it's just a neat book. People are actually surprised when I tell them that Jesus is in it and that the virgin birth is the belief of the Islam faith. They're like, oh no, Muslims don't believe in Jesus. I'm like, yes, they're stunned.
Have you managed to convince anyone, or everyone is still they just can't fathom this information?
A lot of people are pretty surprised, but I'm not sure if I've really convinced anybody or not. I know I've given out a lot of Qurans, so I don't know.
And did you read the Bible much when you were, in your earlier life, when you were, going to the church and everything? Did you read that a lot?
Yes, I did, and I found the difference between the 2 books is striking, because I find in the Quran it just keeps emphasizing that Allah is merciful, Allah is merciful, Allah is merciful, Allah is merciful. I just see that theme over and over and over and over and over again in the Quran.
Okay, and are you able to internalize that into your life? Do you feel this characteristic of God affecting you?
Yes, very much. I love that.
And can you tell me some of your, I know this is a personal question, but some of your spiritual experiences? Have you felt that God has been trying to send messages and communicate with you in any way?
Yes, and I know God is real. I had an experience that was so strong, and it was a long time ago. It was when I'd had a very bad experience in a Christian church, and I came home and I was so devastated that I couldn't do anything but lay on the floor and just sob. And a presence came into the room, and it was so all encompassing that it was like being underwater, and it was the most comforting presence I have ever known. And I started crying again, but it was in a good way. It was the most loving and the most comforting. And I and after that, I've carried that with me the rest of my life. I have never been so completely overwhelmed with such love. And I have always known the rest of my life that God is real, because it was a very physical presence in the room. It wasn't anything that I could see, but it was so real. And I have always known that God is real, because that was a very, very real. I mean, the entire feeling of the room changed when that happened. And I was just barely in my 20s at that time. I was maybe 22, 23. And so I know that that is real. And I've never forgotten. I mean, there's no way. It's not possible to forget something like that. So I've carried that with me my whole life. So I feel like my whole life I've been being pushed in this direction.
And tell me about the way you pray at the moment. Have you adopted any Islamic forms of prayer or anything like that? Have you read, any books on how to pray, or have you just sort of formulated your own style of prayer at the moment?
Well, right now I'm I'm trying to figure this all out. I don't know any Arabic, and I would love to learn because it's such a beautiful, beautiful language, both the written and the spoken. It's just breathtakingly beautiful. And I know that God understands me in English, and I know English and Spanish, and I would love to learn a third language. But I know God understands my English. So right now I'm just trying to stumble through this in English. I'm trying to commune with God constantly, and I would like to learn the prayers.
Okay. What are some of the things do you do? Do you like when you wake up, you pray, or before you go to bed? Can you tell me a bit about your routine?
Yes, I need to set alarms. That's something I need to do, but I'm trying to pray. I'm trying to pray almost constantly through the day, and I'm praying for my husband too. He's wrestling with this because he's already made huge changes in his life. This is a big, huge, huge deal for him, and he's wrestling with it. And the reason I have not made an official conversion yet is because it's very important to me to do it with him, and I believe that it will happen.
Yeah, yeah. I pray to God that it does, because I think you have a lot of. I can see the light and the fire in your heart for the Quran and for Islam. So I pray that this happens.
Well,
So
one thing I've done is he reads to me a lot while I knit, and so I've just said, "Would you read a chapter out of the Quran to me?"
very good. Okay.
So
And so has there been any negativity from him though, or is he sort of understanding, but he just is very hesitant?
there's no negativity. It's just like, we're rural, and in the area that you're at, you are a Republican Christian, and he's already become a Democrat. So he's already made a huge change. And now we're looking at making another huge change.
Yeah. So what would happen in your community there if you both converted to Islam? What would the community do? Would it be a dreadful place to live all of a sudden?
Oh my gosh, I don't even know. I mean, I did a talk at a local, they had there was a church here in town that was doing a 6-week long study on religions of the world. And I met with the minister, and she asked me to come in and talk on Islam. And I came in and I wore my hijab and underscarf, and I wore modest apparel. And you could have heard a pin drop when I walked in. And everybody was very attentive and they listened, but it it was kind of tense. It was a local church, and this was a fairly progressive church. It wasn't one of the, real evangelical ones. This was a fairly progressive one. But
Yeah.
I went in very modest clothing and a hijab, and I've got a hijab. I haven't started dressing hijabi yet. And I'll be honest, I'm frightened.
Yeah, I mean, like if it's a dangerous thing, then maybe it's not the best thing to do. Even if you are a Muslim, if it's going to be dangerous for you, then you have to look after yourself first.
I want to. I mean, I've actually, with Corona, I've been wearing an a niqab and as well as a hijab, and I've been getting by with it because of Corona.
Yeah. Okay.
So right now I'm getting by with it just fine.
Mm, okay. So it could be a nice training ground for you to
But
transition.
and I have no interest in being niqabi. I don't see a need for it in the Quran. But once Corona's gone, there goes my there goes my
Yeah.
and I've been telling people, I said, well, that's I've been saying, well, I'm saving the mask for the first responders. I'm wearing niqab. So
And so how long has it been since you sort of had this feeling where you could possibly convert to Islam?
I think I started seeing the shift in my feelings about being Christian when I started seeing the faith being used as a platform for hate in 2016. And I think it bothered me a lot when so many of them, it had to do a lot with the election of Donald Trump, and that so many supported him. And the teachings of Jesus do not support a man like that. Whether you believe in him as a savior and the Son of God, or whether you believe in him as a prophet, I cannot see how his teachings support a man like that in any way, shape, or form, no matter what you believe of him. And the fact that he has 80 to 90% support has really, really, really bothered me among Christians. And that has done a lot to push me away. And that did a lot towards really making me look for another way. And to begin with, we started looking at all faiths. We have looked at the Eastern religions. We looked at Hinduism. We looked at Buddhism. We looked at Baha'i. We looked at a lot of them.
So when you said we, you mean you and your husband actively together?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, together.
That's wonderful. And so did you spend much time looking at those other religions, or has it mainly been the focus on Islam?
We looked at all of them. We did. And the two that drew us the most were Baha'i and Islam. But Islam is the one that is pulling us the most. And I've made up my mind. He is still wavering between Islam and Baha'i.
Right. Did he say any reason why?
He's just got to make up his mind, and I believe that he will make the right choice. And I'm not going to push him because it's not my place. He will do the right thing, and I will be here when he does. He's a very, very smart man, and he's very wise, and oh my gosh, he's intelligent. His IQ is almost in the genius level. So I know that he will do the right thing in his time.
Did he help you with when you were doing the Carry the Quran initiative?
He supported me. He's got a quiet strength about him. He's not as outgoing as I am. He's more reserved. We balance each other out. I'm real impulsive. I'm real outgoing, and he's more think things through and more detail oriented. I'm real exuberant, and he's more now, let's think about this.
Yeah.
We balance each other out real well.
So to me, it seems like that you are already a Muslim. You believe in one God, and you believe that Muhammad is the messenger and the last messenger of God. Mm-hmm. Does that sound right?
It does.
Okay. Well, that's a good thing for you. You know, I don't think you need an official conversion. So to me, you are already a Muslim. I congratulate you for that.
Thank you.
I pray all, for you, that your husband, that Almighty God gives some guidance to your husband to follow you as well.
Oh, he's a wonderful, wonderful person. And as smart as he is, I have no doubt he'll do the right thing, because I mean, you just can't imagine how smart he is. His IQ is just so high that it just blows me away. But he never rushes anything.
Does he read the Quran as well?
Yeah, he's been reading it to me. Sometimes I'm not above a little bit of manipulation. I just say, honey, would you read me a chapter?
Yeah, that's a good strategy. This is really an amazing story. Never would have thought of this.
Well, if somebody had told me 20 years ago, I would have said, you're nuts.
Yeah, it's really, really strange.
Fortunately, my kids are fine with it too, so.
Okay, do you think that they would ever become Muslim too?
Probably not. But then I would have said I never would either too, so. My kids just said, okay. And I expected a lot more of a reaction than I got. I guess I expected some anger or some hysterics, and all I got was, okay. So that was a relief.
Have you been getting any guidance from actual Islamic teachers or any spiritual teachers in Islam that you could find online or through books?
Well, I've got quite a few books that the people in Dearborn have sent to me. They've been really good about that. They've sent me quite a bit. And then the people in Lincoln have sent me some stuff. And then I've got a Muslima in Lincoln that has been calling me and talking to me.
Do you listen to much audio on the topic of Islam or
Well,
religion?
what I've been doing, I have an Alexa, and I know people say that those things aren't good, but I love it. And I I found a Quran in English, and Alexa reads it to me while I sew. So I know a lot of people don't like those things, but I love it because I have Kindle books, and she will read those to me. So I can be sewing, and Alexa will read to me. And I've been having her read the Quran, and that way I can be doing both at one time.
Excellent. And you said earlier that you enjoy you're a musical artist. Can you tell me a little bit about your experience with listening to the Quran and the how you get the musical enjoyment out of it?
Well, I downloaded one, and I didn't realize it was in Arabic. And so I only understood one word, the first word, Bismillah, and I didn't understand any word, but I was like, oh my gosh, it was the most beautiful thing because it was chant. And I wished I could have understood it because I know that in Arabic it's so full of poetry, and it was just gorgeous. It just killed me that I couldn't understand it because it was chanted, it was sung. I wish I could understand Arabic. So I
Yeah,
do have a copy in Arabic that's audio, and it's like, oh, I wish I could understand it. Because I do know the first word, Bismillah, and I'm like, oh, and I played a little bit of it just because it was so beautiful.
yeah. It's the same for a lot of Muslims, including myself. I don't understand um, all of the Arabic. I've been a Muslim for nearly 20 years now after my conversion. But I do believe that the meanings of the Quran still they come into you just by listening to it, even if you don't understand um, the words. There is some transfer of something when you listen to it that comes into you, which puts brightness into your heart, happiness.
Well, I'd like to learn Arabic because the poetry of it I've heard, and the deepness of the meanings of the words, and the written language is just so beautiful. I want to learn that because I love beauty. And I think Arabic is the most beautiful written language I've ever seen. So I've always thought that.
Yeah, and do you enjoy the any of the Arabic arts, the calligraphy or the the geometric patterns and so forth?
Oh, yes, they're beautiful.
Have
I've
you?
always admired that because while Europe was in the dark ages and packing dung into wounds, they were so advanced in medicine and were sterilizing instruments. I've always admired that aspect of the civilization.
Have you tried to do any of this Islamic style art?
Um, no, I haven't because this is all pretty new to me. I've always just admired it.
Okay, yeah, you might find that interesting to try that.
It would be. It sounds interesting. That's a neat idea.
Okay, Gina. So, do you have any advice to someone who is maybe was in the same position as you, or they're just thinking about converting to Islam? Do you have any advice to them on, how to keep going forward so they can see the truth?
The main advice I would have is just spend time with brothers and sisters and see how they live their life, and just watch the light that shines through them, and see the love and community that they have, and watch the way they live their lives. And that's what'll speak to you. Watch the way they take care of each other. Watch the joy that they have. Watch the passion that they have for each other and for God. Watch the happiness. And that right there will show you if it's real or not. And don't listen to what people say about them. Watch them. Watch who they are. That's what I have to say about it.
Yeah, this is
Spend
truly
time with
amazing. You're the third person that I've had onto this podcast now. This is episode number 9, and you're the third convert that I've talked to, and each one of them has said the same thing, that the thing that brought them and truly to accept Islam was interacting with the people.
That's what's done it for me.
Okay, Gina. Well, this has really been a heart-touching episode for me. I never thought it was going to be like this, and it's a wonderful story, beautiful story. And thank you for sharing it with us and with our listeners out there. And I really, really, I'll pray for you that, that you can successfully accept Islam with your husband and your family.
All right. Well, I've enjoyed visiting with you.
Okay. Thank you, Gina. May the peace of God be upon you.